Hello, Buffs. Welcome to Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull. I'm your host, Dr. Deandra Mull, Vice Chancellor for Student Life. I'm excited to use this platform to connect you with the stories, conversations, and insights to student life here at CU Boulder. Whether you're a student, Buff family member, staff, or alum, this podcast is for you. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode of Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull. I'm your host, Dr. Deandra Mull, and I'm joined by Dr. Maria, who will tell you more about herself and her role as our Director of SLICE. Dr. Genao-Homs, would you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, and hello, Dr. Mull. I'm so glad to be here today. So I serve as the interim director for service learning and impact and community engagement, also known as SLICE. And we are a department that is housed over in the University Memorial Center, or the UMC, on the 4th floor. And the purpose for our department is really just to connect students with the community and the spirit of volunteering in the framework of service learning, which I can share more a little bit later about.
Well, thank you for that. Obviously, service learning is core to what we do as a university. When we think about our mission, in service to the state, in service to our students, and in service to the world. Tell us a bit about what inspires your own passion for community engagement and service.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am a big believer in the fact that we all are here for one another and that it is really important to understand what is happening around us and our place in our community. So for me, it's really about how do we go into doing service? You can go into volunteering with the spirit of service, but if you don't understand the community that you're entering into, and what is happening in that community and why it is that the volunteering is necessary, you're really just scratching the surface. So what you run into as a student or just as anyone going into a community to do service is that you could unintentionally find yourself doing more harm than
Absolutely.
good. So really understanding the context of what you're going into is really critical. I just wanted to share a quick adage that one day I used to live in Chicago and I was driving just like, I think, going to the grocery store or something. And Chicago is known for its murals. And I happened to hit a red light and I was stopped at a red light and I looked to my right and there was a mural that says, "We all live here." And I now have that as a screensaver that I've had for over 10 years. And for me, that's kind of the grounding of it, is that we all live here, meaning in this world.
Yes, the world at large.
And so volunteering service is really tied to how do we support one another in this world, right, that we all share.
So I firmly believe that the why is more important than the what. Why is it important for our students here at CU Boulder to get involved and engage with the community?
So I will say, one of the things that we often talk about and what's a little bit different from service learning than volunteering is that volunteering is simply going in and doing service work, whereas service learning is about understanding and learning about what's around you as you're doing this service. So we really feel in SLICE that doing service and learning is just married together in the work that we do in our department. So students could really be majoring in whatever it is that they're majoring and find something that they could be doing service with and merging essentially those two ideas together. And what it does is that it ultimately helps students to expand their horizons, to understand the impact of what they're studying beyond the context of their classroom, but it ties it to the real world experience of what's happening outside of space. And it also is something that is not transactional, right? You often do service outside of payment or some sort of personal gain. It really is to help others. So I think it just adds an additional prism to what students are learning. So if you think about trying to graduate as a whole person, doing service really it's a more value added to you as a student. So you're not just walking out with this degree that says, I understand the content of this specific major, but it also says, oh, I can critically think about how this is tied to the world around me.
So for our students, I hear you saying they're coming in and they're gaining not just content, but context.
Yes.
Their why becomes bigger than all of us because we all live here. I love that,
Yes.
That you added earlier. And just the fact that they really get to sit in spaces and understand the ways in which they show up and how it impacts the world around them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, we're now in week 7 of the school year. We know that for many of our students, they're new to CU, they're new to Boulder, they're new to this part of the world. Some of them may also be new to service learning. How does a student get started. This is their first time, again, exploring many different things. What's a good first step for them to take as they think about how they might give back in this vein?
So I always say, a great place to start is to come check out our office. So we're located on the fourth floor of the UMC, and you can just simply come in and say, I'm really interested in doing service. How do I get connected? Well, Slice has, I'm going to age myself here, but we have a Rolodex, as I like to say. It is digital now. But we have a Rolodex of over 300 community partners, not just in the Boulder Valley area, but really all over Colorado. And I would dare to say all over the United States. But if students are looking just as a way of an entry point, they can just come to the office and say, I'd love to do service. Who needs service hours, right? And then we can sit down and talk to the student about what is it that their interests are, and then pair them with a community partner who needs their help. And it's really just as simple as that. But I would say another way to get connected is that the Slice also has what's called a joint board. And a joint board is a group of students that helps the person that sits in the seat that I sit in as a director and helps guide the mission of the office. So one of the things that's really interesting is that this is a department that has been on this campus since 1965. So this is a department that was founded by students. Just the genesis of it was by students and has been driven by students. Has been through various iterations, but always with students at the center. So if students want to take it a step up, we're always looking for board members. We actually have openings right now. But if you're a student who has always done service and are thinking, how do I go beyond just being paired? Joining the board is a great way to do it, because then you're with your peers who are also very much of a service-minded group.
Wonderful. So you can not only give back, you can also do it with the community as you give back to the community. That's a really cool concept. Again, as a firm believer in the value of service learning, I think that as our students are listening to the ways that they can get involved, this is really cool. Can you tell me about some of the programs or projects that you're working on? You also mentioned students being able to come in and say, hey, I want to get connected to X interest. What are things or projects, again, programs that you're really moving forward right now that you say, students, come in now, you can get involved with this?
So we have several opportunities for you to plug in as a student. So we have what we call CU in the Community, and that's a half-day service opportunity that tends to happen on Saturday mornings. Now, I will add to that, one of the framing for the department is to serve, learn, reflect. It is the process that we follow for every service event. So if you do CU in the Community, you would sign up with your friends or on your own. We can always introduce you to people if you're looking for friends. But you would come on a Saturday. We provide breakfast. At that breakfast, we talk about the service opportunity, the community partner. We talk about the context in which we're entering, why we're doing this service, right? This is the reflection portion. And you as a student get to sit and reflect on, what is it that I'm about to do? And what's the impact that I'm about to have? So
why is that important?
So that's so important because we need to understand as people that we all, even though we might think of ourselves as a singular person, we all have an impact on the person that might just be sitting next to us. It could be an action that we do, something that we say, a way that we behave, even a nonverbal, right, response that we have with a look on our face. So we ask students to sit together and really reflect on, who am I as a person? How do my identities impact what I'm about to do? So the equity piece and inclusion is really central to this office, so that we do it in the space of our peers before we enter the service that we are going to do. So it's a way for us to think beyond just the service hours we are going to do, but also reflect on our impact and what we're going to do. So once you go and you do this service, then you come back and do a post-service reflection. And that's where we think about, so did what I thought was going to happen at the beginning actually show up in the experience? And again, being reflexive is just a really nice practice for all of us to have, that not everybody gets to really flex their muscle in doing, but it just reminds us that whether it's in the service opportunity, CU in the community context, or just walking around the world in whatever we're doing, right? That we all have an impact in what's happening around us. So, but just to also answer the rest of your questions, we have See in the Community, which is a half-day event. We also do different projects throughout the year that students can step into. And then we have what's called our SCO-Serve program, which are our serve trips. And so those can either happen in a weekend, they can happen during a spring break, which you as a as a student interested in doing service in a longer term format would apply. And right now applications are open, so you can apply.
You hear
And
that, students? It's
yes,
time to apply, buffs.
it's time to apply. And you would apply to just do a SCO-Serve trip during your spring break portion. And you would then be selected to go be attached to a trip, and you would travel with your peers to do a long-term service for a week. And that's domestic right now in the States during spring break. We are also offering international SCO-Serve trips, which would be in the summertime. But these are opportunities where you can really like fully immerse yourself outside of, I would say, the familiarity of Boulder and do service elsewhere. And that's a really great way to connect also with your peers in a different format. And I will say that as somebody who did service as a student, I made some really deep, meaningful connections with those folks because again, I'm giving up my spring break, and I would say you're not giving anything up. You're actually gaining more than anything else, but also connecting with my peers in a different context. So you come back a different person with these bonds with these people that you just had this really meaningful experience with. So that's just a few things, but you can also check out our website or our socials for other ways to get engaged.
You just hit upon something that I think is really critical. You talked about your own passion and what you've gained in that space of service learning from your own personal lens. Can you share a particular story or example direct that really to this day just still sits centered with you as you think about your why again and how you interact and engage with the world?
Oh, yes. Yes, I can. So I will say, and this for me, service is a very personal value of mine. So one example that I can share specifically from my undergraduate years at the University of Central Florida is that this was, again, dating myself, in the late 90s or the previous, I don't know, century as students are saying.
The late 1900s.
The late 1900s. Yeah, late 1900s. Yes, the late 1900s. But, you know, that was still at a time when HIV and AIDS was very much misunderstood, right? We had just seen the epidemic happen in the 70s and 80s. This is happening in the 90s. And we still did not have rapid testing. It had just started then. And I had a family member who was infected with HIV and eventually passed away from AIDS. And so what we were seeing in the late 90s, early 2000s was more college-age students being infected by sexually transmitted diseases, yes, specifically absolutely. HIV. And during that time, rapid testing started coming up, but we didn't really talk about it, right? And so one of the things that I did with a group of peers was we applied for a grant from a national higher education association to just say, we need money because we want to do service work to go into communities and support them, but also educate our peers on what's happening. And so we received that grant and created a year-long program that's continues to exist at the University of Central Florida.
Wow.
That allowed for us to go into the community in the Orlando metro area, so Orlando, Florida, to do work with not only infected individuals, but also the affected people, right? So the people who were the loved ones or cared for folks that had HIV or AIDS. So we were able to do that work. But then also on our campus, we were able to bring in the quilt, which is known for its just story of really highlighting, right, the numbers of people that have been impacted by the epidemic that is AIDS and HIV, but then also educate our peers on what's a safe way to have sex. What does it look to be infected by a sexually transmitted disease? The fact that HIV is no longer a death sentence. To really encourage students to get tested, right? That getting tested, again, this impact on we all live here.
Yeah.
That if I'm infected and I'm engaging in intercourse with someone else, I'm then impacting them. They're impacting someone else. And we all live here, right? We need to take care of each other. So in this service project, we were able to really create something that was peer-to-peer, that was created by peers with other peers and continues to exist. And that was 20 some odd years ago. And for me, that's something that I continued in my life, is doing service with HIV and AIDS inflicted communities and just talking really openly about the fact that we can really eradicate this thing, even though the majority of people impacted by HIV and AIDS tends to be our most marginalized communities, right? So a lot of reflection as somebody who holds many marginalized identities myself, but empowering those people in those communities to also learn for themselves, right? It's not taboo. The moment we remove that stigma, then we can do so much good. So that's something that still is very near and dear to me. And I've shared it with students that do service work through SLICE and just have continued to talk about it during my career in higher ed. But that's one of the grounding moments for me that really taught me what, as a 19-year-old, may have felt like I had no impact in such a pivotal moment, really, in the world's history around health. And we really did make an impact.
Well, and I love the fact that you mentioned impact, because when you think about even the name of the office, service learning and impact and community engagement, that is so much bigger than simply the moment. The fact that there is still an organization at the University of Central Florida that exists because students had a why and then they went forward with the what is certainly impressive and a testament to the power of the students for generations who've moved that initiative forward. So certainly that is great. Can you give one piece of advice to students who are just simply looking for inspiration or motivation to get more involved? It may not be that they don't want to, but perhaps some haven't had the time. What piece of advice would you give to them as they look forward?
I would say just ask yourself and ask your peers, what are you interested in, right? What really makes you excited to do? It could be something you create. But the reflection piece, like we did, at UCF, but just look around in your family and the group of loved ones, whether it's your chosen family, your blood family, your friends around you. Ask your peers in your residence hall. If you're a student that lives in a residence hall, ask your suite mates, what's exciting for you? What is of interest to you? How can we do good, right? It doesn't need, you didn't need to figure out, so what is good? It doesn't need to be anything big. But ask the question of what's of interest to you. How can I help the peers around me and my community, and just start there. And it doesn't have to be like tons of hours. It could just be 1 hour that you do. I mean, I will tell you personally, I love dogs. I had committed, both my spouse and I have committed that if we have dogs, we adopt them from a shelter.
Yes.
Right?
Same.
That's a way to give service, to do service. And that's a deep commitment, because you're bringing this animal into your home and taking them out of a shelter, right? Which is nobody wants to live in a shelter environment, whether you're a human or an animal, and you're committing to taking care of that animal. That is a great way of doing service.
That's a long-term service.
And that's a long-term service. That's a way that benefits that animal, but I would say also benefits us. So that's an example. And a lot of people like cats and dogs and guinea pigs, and there's plenty of shelters in the area. But just find the one little thing and just start there and go from there.
So what I'm hearing is service learning allows you to give, but also to gain. It's certainly an area which you can have intended impact and certainly outcomes that you didn't even expect. I can think about my own service learning experience, and I gained so much more than I ever thought that I gave. And so while the communities that we're working with, you go into the spaces and you know that there's going to be something that's exchanged, but when you walk out of the things you have are not measurable with regard to monetary giving or how we lived in that space. So just thank you for, number one, the commitment you've had to leaving the world much better in all the ways and all the places. Also for making sure that our students have a platform to do that, to give and to give back. Certainly is really much a credit to your own work, the work of your team, as we try to be of impact in the communities in which we live, because we do all live here. So there you have it. Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull, joined by Dr. Maria here today. We're grateful for you for joining us, and thank you to all of you who are listening and watching. And with that, Go Buffs!